Marvels of modern technology. We are told we are now live, so welcome. We've certainly got a good gathering on the screen, and many that are also in my pane here of the waiting area, and those that are just not really visual on your screen right now. So welcome to everybody that is tuned in. We've got a great agenda before us, some nice delegations to give us a few updates, so it's going to be an interesting meeting. So without further ado, first item of business, Madam Clerk. You're muted there, Heather.
She's frozen.
There we go. First item of business, Madam Clerk. Well, I'm pretty sure I read her lips and she said, "Roll call, Your Worship." I've taken it and everyone is present. Is that what you said, Heather?
Hang on here.
I can hear you,
Okay,
Heather.
there we go. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Roll call, Your Worship. I've taken roll, and all members are present with the exception of Councillor DeReggio. And I'm not sure I saw Councillor Desjardins. Sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. There he is.
Yes,
Yep, just Councillor DeReggio.
Very good. Thank you. Next item, please.
Motion to adopt this evening's agenda, Your Worship.
Motion to move the agenda, moved by Councillor Chaboyer, seconded by Councillor Parker. Any changes or additions? Seeing none, we're ready for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
A motion to confirm the minutes of the January 4th regular meeting.
Moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Lupke. Any changes, errors, or omissions, I should say? And seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Under the order of presentations, Your Worship, we have a presentation from Tom Crook and I believe Councillor Cameron on behalf of the Western Manitoba Centennial Auditorium regarding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Very good. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for being here. So we'll just turn it right over to you and you can handle it as you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. Like the rest of the world, 2020 has been a tough year on the auditorium. We had to cancel or reschedule 102 events, 16 of these for multiple days, anywhere from 2 to 5 days per event. We had a loss of revenue of $220,686. That is pure profit. That's after any kind of taxes, credit card fees, and whatever else was taken out of there. This is based on what we booked and how they did in the past, and not including anything that might have booked within a short time frame, like meetings downstairs and other events that would have been booked a lot shorter time period. Since March 14th, all the staff except myself, the GM, and the box office manager have been laid off. We've survived with the help of the city, province, and federal government. The two of us have been on the wage subsidy since the beginning, as well as took advantage of loans, grants from the province and federal government. We also kept all the costs down in the building as much as possible, like canceling snow clearing contract, not turning on the air conditioning in the summer, unplugging anything and everything that wasn't being used. We cut our hydro bill pretty much in half. On the capital side, we spent just under $30,000 of the $50,000 that's allocated to us from the city. Some of the projects that were done were, excuse me, a new accessibility ramp out front in the main entrance, a new lighting control panel, a new climate control humidifier for the Steinway piano, a new distribution power upgrade for the stage, chiller refrigerant replacement, a new freezer for the bar, and some new computer equipment. Unfortunately, with the pandemic going on, some of the other projects were not completed, with some companies being closed or parts on back order, like our back doors, for instance, were supposed to be replaced, and I don't think they're going to even be here till the middle of February, and they were ordered in the early fall. As far as reopening, we've had reopening plans done since May and keep on changing depending on the restrictions. Unfortunately, every time we plan an event, the restrictions change. We've had numerous ones from private events to bookings that have been rescheduled, as I mentioned. We're hoping to start off doing smaller events in the first part of this year. Of course, that got pushed further again. Once we get back to yellow in health orders, we can do 30% of our 804 capacity. With distancing of, we can do about 207 people in the auditorium, if we can sell the tickets in groups of 4, 3, or 2. So it'd be a little bit tricky, but our ticketing system is set up for that. We're ready to go when the time is right and safe. In saying that, we're not sure how the general public will feel about that. We have a survey going out in the next month to get some feedback how people feel about attending a show at this point, with waiting for a vaccine, how long would they wait before shows start, et cetera, et cetera. We also belong to an organization called the Prairie Regional Presenters, which consists of 20 theaters across Western Canada. We meet every couple of weeks to discuss plans, smaller shows, everything and everything. So that's been a really good support system for all of us to put together. So that's kind of where we're at.
Excellent. And I'll just reiterate from the Board of Governors side of things, Your Worship. Just want to reiterate the support of the board on this direction. And the board is happy to know we have a team in place at the facility that's prepared to continue to embrace the challenges faced by the WMCA. Like so many other venues, the need is real and it's palpable this year. We'd also like to thank the community and council for sticking by the WMCA during this challenging time. We know when the time is right, we'll again be able to welcome patrons in to experience the best of live music, entertainment, and stage performance. On behalf of the Board of Governors, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Your Worship and Council for your continued support of the WMCA. And with your leave, at this time, we would entertain any questions members of Council have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook and Councillor Cameron. Great overview, and just sort of leading off, certainly very gratifying to see how extremely resourceful, obviously, you've been. I may have a question or two, but I'll open the floor first. I think we've got Councillor Parker up, so go ahead, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, just to Tom and his staff. I'll speak probably on behalf of Councillor Fawcett as well, who, along with Councillor Cameron, sit on that board. That we've seen firsthand the efforts put forth by the staff and management over there to make the best of a fairly dire situation. They've done a tremendous job, really, to maintain the position they are. So kudos to them, and we hope to have all the remaining staff back in the fold soon, and people filling the seats again. So just wanted to pass that along, and if I say it, it'll be a lot quicker than if Councillor Fawcett does.
Dear, thank you, Councillor Parker. So we'll continue. I'm just watching for other hands up. Well, others may be coming up. I might ask a question, as Tom pointed out, the vagaries of getting, especially concerts, started up again, and the touring propositions, and that you do stay in contact with your whatever it was called, Prairie Presenters organization there. But I'm guessing that some acts that may be cross-border in terms of U.S. acts will present an even different, sort of challenge, unpredictability, as I'm sure that's being discussed and factored in. What do we know about that piece?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're not even looking south right now, because even acts from Ontario are going to have a hard time coming out here at this point. So we'll probably start off more with the Western artists that are available, local, Manitoba, etc. Once things get rolling and the vaccines get a little further, then we can revisit that. I mean, we're bound by whatever health does, right? So depending on what the board is even open at that point.
Very good. Thanks very much. I guess probably the way I anticipated, but certainly there's lots of layers to these pandemic considerations. I'm sure we'll be hearing kind of similar stories from one of our other delegations tonight, provincial exhibition, kind of in very similar circumstances to some of the same things that WMCA would be following. So again, I'm still checking my monitor if there are any other questions or comments from other members of council. I'm not seeing any, so I think you've got it covered, gentlemen. So thank you very much for coming forward and keeping council updated. Certainly the Centennial Auditorium, very integral part of our community, and just a tremendous amenity that we're very lucky to have in our community, and we're certainly grateful that you've found the means to keep treading water and keeping your head above water as we navigate through all this. So thank you very much on behalf of council and the community.
Thank you.
So a motion to receive would be in order, please. Moved by Councillor Fawcett, seconded by Councillor Parker. Anybody wish to comment before I call the question? Not seeing any. I will call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, and again, thanks for joining us this evening. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Your Worship, before I announce the next presentation, I would note that I apologize, Councillor Reggio has joined us online. I missed him when we were doing roll call. So all members of council are present.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying that.
And then also under the order of presentations this evening, we have Mr. Greg Crisanti, the president of the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba, to give us an update on what's happening with the Provincial X and, unfortunately, the cancellation of the 2021 Royal Manitoba Winter Fair.
Very good. Welcome to Mr. Crisanti, and I'll let you take it away and look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, Your Worship, City Councillors. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Greg Crisanti, and on behalf of the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba, Happy New Year, and thank you for the opportunity for me to speak this evening on activities that the Provincial Exhibition has been involved with over the last 10 months during the pandemic, and some good news maybe to share with you at the end of where we hope to go with. Much like Tom's story in the Centennial Auditorium, the Provincial Exhibition has been around since 1882, but this last year has definitely been probably the worst, if not the worst, for financial struggles in our business. We are in the event business, bringing events to Brandon, and with cancellations of our events, we've really had to put our heads together to produce much needed revenue to keep our organization afloat. If we can take a couple steps back to where it all began, on March 13th, just 2 weeks before we were scheduled to open the gates at the 2020 Royal Manitoba Winter Fair, we did have to make the hard decision, but it was the right decision, the safe decision, to go through with the cancellation of this event. For those of you that aren't aware, the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair does bring in $13 million with an impact study done in 2014. 7.2 million spent right here in the community by non-locals, including 1.4 million in accommodations and 725,000 in restaurants right here in Brandon. Within a week, 80% of the Provincial Exhibition staff had to be temporarily laid off due again to cut savings and help reduce expenses. So this was a tough decision, but although the right decision again, and the majority of our 2020 was spent with just 2 members on our staff team. After the 2020 Royal Manitoba Winter Fair news was listed there, kind of happened as a domino effect. We were in and out of different codes for the pandemic, which led to the Manitoba Summer Fair cancellation that was scheduled for June 3rd to June 7th. Our Manitoba AgX cancellation October 28th to the 31st. And most recently, the cancellation of our 2021 President's Dinner and the 2021 Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. We would like to point out that we are deeply grateful for the city to come on board with the 2020 Royal Manitoba Winter Fair accommodation tax that we would have received if our event did go through. So on behalf of the board, we would like to thank you once again for helping us out when it was deeply needed. To help with the significant loss of critical revenue sources, our organization spent the majority of 2020 hosting smaller fundraisers. And at this time, I too would like to say a huge thank you to our staff, our other 39 directors, who really put time and energy in thinking outside the box, again, to bring in funds when it was needed, so we can get by to be able to host our next live event for our community. Over the summer, we were very successful with 3 amazing summer students. 2 of them were done through the provincial program and 1 through the federal program. With no events being hosted in the near future, we were able to get some stuff caught up around our dome building and inside our train fair building, as well as at the same time we were able to give back to the community by volunteering with the Habitat for Humanity Women Build Day, which we had a fantastic, they had a fantastic time in that. So we were great, we were able to help out with that. Moving on to some of our smaller fundraisers that we did throughout 2020 during all these cancellations. We kicked off June with our Royal Grand Raffle. These are net profits that you can see in the bottom of your screen. So a net profit of $25,800 thanks to this amazing Royal Grand Raffle and the community support we had. Moving on into May, June, and October, we were able to host some popular curbside pickups, such as the curbside rib dinner, the barbecue pack fundraiser, Father's Day pickup with barbecue chicken dinner, and our harvest feast sale. I know some of you participated and were able to pick up and help us out during these events, and they were very popular, and we'd like to thank you for your support on that as well. CAFE, Canadian Association of Fairs and Exhibitions, put on a nationwide 50-50 that the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba was able to get behind. So anyone that logged into their website and chose to purchase a ticket in support of the Provincial Exhibition, we were able to get a cut of the proceeds for that. And again, the net profit for that one was $3,500. In July, an idea came up that we would host a rain barrel fundraiser, and this was great. A couple board members got behind this one, and the net profit of that one was $2,000. We have a current GoFundMe page online ready to go, and to date it's brought in $39,000 thanks to community support and sponsors in our community. In September, we were able to hold a giant yard sale fundraiser, which went over really good. It was a great event. This consisted of a lot of the items that our summer students were able to find in the trade fair building that were collecting dust that we no longer had use for. So we were able to get rid of that, as well as sell off some of our assets, including our washrooms trailers and our construction items. And these were fixed assets, like our scissor lifts, brought in a total of $131,350. Our Text to Donate campaign, we launched just to reach a different demographic to see if there was any interest in there, an easier way to donate to the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba. This campaign is now done, but it was able to bring in $750. Also, during the summer and into the fall, we were able to host some dome building tours. One of our staff members was able to give great guided tours when it was safe, and we were able to do so. $5 registration, and gave a little history of our organization, as well as our beautiful display building. Back into October, we were very busy in October. You can see we had our Fall Fest and Market at the Dome. We were able to do this, and it was a great weekend event. Had some fun on the hay rides, some food trucks, pumpkin sales, and we were able to bring in a net profit of $8,300 for that one. Coming into December, a very popular wine and gift basket fundraiser that we hosted. Little early Christmas gifts maybe for those online shoppers, and some great sponsors helped us out with that one. We were able to bring in a net profit of $1,000. And just coming into Christmas, one of the last ones that we ran was our Save the Fairs apparel line, our hashtag Save the Fairs. You'll be hearing lots about hashtag Save the Fairs in the next little while, and I'll get into that near the end of the presentation. But this clothing was available to buy just before Christmas, and was able to bring in a net profit of $2,200 as we worked with one of our sponsors as well. Holiday art auction we were able to tap into, again, with some great pieces brought in by local artists, donated to our organization, and again, a net profit of $2,200. So at this time, our organization is struggling financially. As you can see, we are in the event business. Our major funding does come from our three major fairs, like I mentioned, our Royal Manitoba Winter Fair, our Manitoba Summer Fair, and our Manitoba AgEx. We were hoping our story would be different for 2021, but currently that's not the case, as we've already seen 2 cancellations of our most recent events we would be busy planning. But I'm excited to share with you all this evening, and as well as our community, that the Provincial Ex of Manitoba will be kicking off our Love Affair campaign. This campaign is going to bring in some great opportunities for us to bring in some much needed funding, and our slogan is your history, your community, your fairs. Some ideas and campaigns we're ready to launch is our Your Name in Stone campaign. So we will be able to get your name, your business name, leave a legacy of a name into our front sidewalks, as well as the start of our east side behind the building, the start of what we hope to be a beautiful garden one day. As well as we will be releasing our tree planting initiative called Rooted in History. So the same idea, businesses, companies will be able to put their names on a tree that we will be able to get going on that east side to clean that back of our dome building up. An online auction, bigger and better items. We're really excited for this one. We've already had some great prizes coming in, and we're looking forward to launching that into our community in the near future. We will be bringing back some of our most popular fundraisers that we ran in 2020, including our food and beverage sales, as well as our clothing lineup with the hashtag Save the Fairs. Our board of directors is also busy with our pledge packages, hoping to get some pledge packages out to our community as well as businesses in our area that support the Provincial Ex. And last but not least, I'm very proud to announce the support of the Kinsmen Club of Winnipeg with their Kinsmen Jackpot Bingo funds of $100,000 will be a donation to the provincial exhibition in form of a matching donation. So, as we launch the Love Affair campaign this evening, in the near future, we will be setting our bottom line to $100,000. Of course, as an organization, we've always gone above and beyond, and we are really looking forward to going above and beyond, raising some much needed funds for our organization to get us by until our next event is able to run right here in Brandon and our neighbors across at the Keystone Center. So really looking forward to that. And again, we'd like to thank your worship and all your counselors for all your hard work, hearing our stories, your supporters, our sponsors. Everyone has heard our story, and we appreciate everything that you have done so far for our organization to get us by in 2020 and into 2021. We've been around for over 100 years. We aren't going anywhere, but it will be a struggle without your support. to get us to the next level. So again, thank you for your time tonight, and we appreciate everything.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Crisanti, to you and your board and all of your volunteers and your staff, those that are active and those that are sadly sidelined at the moment. So that's been an excellent presentation, Greg. And once again, I guess the very unfortunate but heartwarming side of this pandemic is just, as I always put it, watching the resiliency of the human spirit that steps up, and your organization is certainly a hallmark of that. You're just doing so many things, and you did a great job of depicting all of the various fundraisers and activities that you've done to obviously raising some very valuable funds, but also just kind of keeping the exposure of the fair alive and well, and just reminding everyone what a big part of the fabric of this community that the fairs have been. They basically go back to the very beginnings of Brandon, and so very important that we see you out the other side of this. So great presentation and a great piece of news at the end. So before I entertain questions for you, I just would clarify so that the Kinsman Jackpot Bingo are putting up 100,000 that can be matched. So if you raise 100, you get another 100 from the Kinsman Club there. So that is a great opportunity, and frankly, I love the slogan of your campaign, the love affair. That's just outstanding. So I will open the floor or the airwaves to questions if we have some. Hopefully you were pretty thorough, but we'll see if some members of council have some questions for you. Go ahead, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Crisanti. Thanks very much for the presentation, Greg. Once again, reiterate what the mayor had said there. Kudos to you and your organization for keeping afloat during this challenging time. Obviously, looking at the fundraising campaign, we also want to, hopefully set a ceiling or a challenge out there for the community. What, obviously the sky's the limits, and ideally that's where you want to be. But what would be kind of your hope for the fundraising campaign to have been a success? Reiterate what the mayor had said there. Kudos to your organization for keeping afloat during this challenging time. Obviously, looking at the fundraising campaign, we also want. I got myself in stereo there.
Yeah, that's all right. Thank you, Sean. Your Worship, through you to Councillor Cameron. I don't think we can put a top on it, like you said. Our organization has a lot of expenses because of our beautiful building that we put on. So we definitely don't want to stop it. A rough estimate, it costs about $25,000 a month for our organization to survive. So you can kind of put the numbers to work there. So it does cost a pretty penny for us to survive for a year without any of our larger events.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Keeping an eye on other questions. Forgive me here. Councillor Cullen, I believe. You're muted there, Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Greg and your organization. Again, I'd like to congratulate you. I was amazed at how many different fundraising pieces that you've done over the last little while. If people wanted to be on a mailing list or a contact list, how would they go about that, just to make sure that I know that I participated in a few barbecue packages and things like that worked out, but I was looking and I noticed I missed a few. So what would you do in order to where could people sign up to make sure that they're sort of on a newsletter type of contact list so they can see what you're doing?
Thank you, Mr. Cullen. Your Worship, through you to Mr. Cullen. The best way, we are on all our social media, our Instagram, our Facebook, our Obviously, our email address is info@provincialx.com. You can give us a call, leave us a message if no one picks up, because like I said, we do have only currently 2 staff working, but these girls are here more than their length of time needed for their hours. But please send us an email, give us a call, find us on social media, and we'll make sure we're not missing you on any mailing list or get you involved in any of our fundraisers. So thank you, that was a great question.
Thank you. And I'm watching the list here. I'm not seeing any other hands come up. Councillor Fawcett.
Right on. Thank you. Through to Mr. Crisanti. Great presentation, and I sure do appreciate all the work you guys have been doing. You know, you're almost the last in line to get reopened. I don't know if there's anybody behind you to open. So forecasting into this year, it's good to see you are forecasting for fundraising, because the federal government is suggesting by June that we might have a lot of vaccinations out. The provincial governments are saying September, November. Realistically, you're forecasting this year as mostly trying to just keep your head above water again and hope for 2022. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Fawcett. Yeah, exactly. Who knows what's going to be lifted? Our next larger event that we have scheduled or are still blocked off at the Keystone Centre is our Manitoba Summer Fair. Now, it's an outdoor event, but again, there's so many moving parts to that. The Midway is coming up from the south, so who knows what's going to be happening, where their routes are coming from down in Florida. They're not going to come straight to Brandon. So are we going to be in one of their stops? Who knows? Will we even be able to host an event with that many people? So the question is, or the answer to that is, we will still be hopeful that we can celebrate in one of our events for 2021. But at this time, we're thinking outside the box at some other options to make sure we are getting to enough funds that we can survive until our next live event. We have been applying for grants as well, so we will continue to do that as well. Any funding out there that we see, we definitely apply for, and we'll keep plugging away with that as well.
Right on. Thanks, Greg. And I know everybody's working from home right now, but are you selling that wallpaper you have at your house there?
You like that? I can sell that. Yeah, that's no problem. Hey,
you're more committed than most, but that.
Remember what I said? $25,000 a month, so we can probably get you a couple of them.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Fawcett. Now, Councillor Lupke, go ahead, please.
I would suggest Councillor Fawcett's price tag for that would be $100,000. I would probably help out.
There you go.
You kind of touched on it a little bit there, through your worship, to Mr. Crisanti, about the grants. Greg, I was just curious, had you done a lot of investigation into a couple of the federal programs, like the Highly Affected Sectors Credit Availability Program or the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, and kind of looked at those as options for the Provincial X?
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Lupke. Yes, our Board of Directors has created its own committee just to look after the grants. So a group of 4 or 5 of them, as well as with some outside help from our long-term volunteers, have been going over every grant possible out there and applying for. Unfortunately, we have had more no's than yeses, but any yeses is better if we were doing something. So we'll keep going that route. But thank you for the question, and by all means, if you know of something, please send it our way to the office if you think it may be missed. But other than that, we should be on it already.
Okay, thank you for that one, Councillor Lupke. And I'm not seeing any more hands coming up. I'm thinking that we've got it fairly well covered off. So with that, I thank you very much, Greg. Fabulous presentation. Obviously we're going to stay in touch, and best of luck, all the campaigns you've got lined up ahead, especially this major one, the Love Affair campaign. A lot rides on it, so hopefully the community does really stay tuned to this, and we all get behind it. So thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
A motion to, thank you, Greg. Motion to receive would be in order, please. Moved by Councillor Lupke, seconded by Councillor Sean Barry. Any discussion? Seeing none, we can call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Under the order of delegations, Your Worship, we have a presentation from Duke Caldwell and Jennifer Mose, who are members of the Park Community Center Board, regarding the Park Center building renewal.
Well, very good. I would have liked to have had former Councillor Caldwell at our podium once again, but it won't be exactly the podium. It's going to be this virtual format. So again, thanks to Jennifer and Drew for being here. So we'll just turn it over to you folks, and you can handle it as you will. Looks like Jennifer's ready to go, but whoever wants to lead off is just great by us.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. I have a presentation here, so we'll split my screen. Okay, here we are. Okay, so we are here today because Park Community Center is being threatened with closure. The City of Brandon's current plan is to demolish the Park Community Center and turn it into a green space. We do not accept the argument that the city cannot afford to help repair our center, and we know that the center is an important part of Brandon, and for the center to remain open and operating outweighs the cost of repairs. Okay. So here's a beautiful painting of the center. Now the history. So for many years, this center has been an important part of the neighborhood and the culture and social scene in Brandon. From youth and community dances, ice rink and carnival, the hockey team, whist tournaments and coffee parties, poetry, art and music shows, and going back to the winter carnivals and crowning of the Ice Queen. Sounds so interesting. So here's a couple of photos that were taken of the Park Community Center. The center continues to be an important part of Brandon's cultural scene, featuring events with art, dance, and poetry. So we have held art flow workshops, and we've had, this is our fundraising to save money for the park, and we have, this is an art flow workshop that we had at the Brandon Neighborhood Renewal. They sponsored us, and this is Seedy Sunday, where people come and exchange seeds and talk about gardening. So here's a really big event that we've, oh, sorry, what happened? Oh, sorry about that. We have youth and fitness classes once a week, yoga classes, and private renters for family friends gathering, birthday parties. We have Elections Canada they've been contacting us every couple of weeks to see about being able to host the elections. And so we have, let's see here. The Park Community Board and its members have been campaigning and working hard to save our center. We have created a GoFundMe page, petitions, t-shirt sales. We had planned an outdoor concert. We've had paint nights. The outdoor concert, we were going to close off the block and have a big block party. And as a board, we've worked diligently in renewing our charity status and keeping up our CRA records. So we've connected with different companies. Move this here. There we go. There we go. Just a second here, I lost my arrow. Oh, we'd like to know that our fundraising efforts would have shown even more promise if we were not in a global pandemic, and we've had to cancel our plans, unfortunately. So here's the back of the center, our gardens. So we're asking for a fair distribution of funds to be given to our community center's major upgrades and repairs. The 2017 remediation of Valley View Community Center cost $266,000. $236,000 of that amount was funded by the city, and the remainder was funded by the Central Council of Community Centers. Park Community Center plays an important role and offers something for the diverse community in Brandon. We have received funding from Brandon Neighborhood Renewal Corporation and Healthy Together Now to host all age group events, from art classes, cooking classes, health and well-being presentation, and youth dances. We've applied and received $10,000 from the Manitoba Bridge Grant, which was so awesome. We have received more than $6,000 in fundraising money. The Central Council has approximately $75,000 left from the 2018 budget, and $25,000 from the 2019 budget that can be made available to Park Community Center, and that is not including funding from the 2020 budget. So with completing the repairs to the center and bringing capacity back up to 140 people, we'll be able to continue serving our community with art and culture programming, fitness classes, markets, music events, weekly programming, social and private gathering. Our board has grown over the last year, and we've been working on strengthening our communication efforts within our community, and which has created a stronger foundation for us to move forward. We recommend that instead of demolishing the Park Community Center, we would commit to saving it, investing in structural upgrades and repairs, and developing and reinvigorating and engaging in restorative programming and services. We feel it is important that we work together with the city and other centers to make sure that our community is always up to date and informed on the events being held in our centers. We also feel it is important that we create a startup manual for each center, collaborating with the city to inform new members on the structure and guidelines of running a community center. The global pandemic has only furthered the need for human interaction and connection. Let's continue to support groups, organizations, and spaces that provide the opportunity for these connections. Mayor Creston Council, we hope you choose to support the future of Park Community Center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And I'm not sure if your counterpart, it looks like Drew is on the connection, but sometimes the technology doesn't work well. So I didn't want to move on to questions until we heard whether or not Mr. Caldwell was adding to the presentation or just here for questions.
Can you hear me, Rick?
Yeah, I think we can hear you. Go ahead, Drew.
I actually had registered as a delegation myself as a citizen. I wasn't part of the park presentation, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, well, I think then we can. They were sort of included together on our agenda, but again, we don't have any problem just kind of letting you go ahead and, we can let you go ahead. Sort of, it's obviously part of the same initiative. And then if there's questions, councilors can direct them to whichever presenter they wish. So just go ahead if you like, Drew.
Okay, thanks very much, Rick, and I very much appreciate being part of the meeting tonight. It's unusual circumstances, I know, for all of us to be doing this on the internet. And like you, I would much rather be at the podium in front of you than on the computer screen. But I do thank you, and props to your city staff for being able to put this together on a regular basis. My presentation was around public policy and the public policy initiatives that the city, the province, and the federal government have undertaken over the last 3 decades for downtown renewal. Rick, as you'll know, or your worship, as you know, started working to revitalize the downtown core area about the same time as you did. I was general manager of what was then Main Street Brandon, emerged into the BIA, and then became Renaissance Brandon, and today the Downtown Development Corporation. Back when we were kids, Rick, you'll remember, or your worship will remember, I was general manager of Main Street Canada project in downtown Brandon when we redeveloped the Chamber of Commerce building together in our early 20s. So I go back a long way in terms of core area renewal in the city of Brandon, as do you, although you've still got your hair. Also, I'm a lifetime resident of downtown Brandon and have seen tremendous changes over the last 50 years. Most of them have been problematic in terms of the decline of the downtown core area and the residential core. Today, we were faced in the residential Rosser ward. I confirmed this with Chief Balkan a couple of weeks back. 33% of the calls police calls in Brandon are to Rosser ward right now. The Rosser ward residential community is the lowest income community in Brandon. Most of my neighbors, in fact, do not have cars. The poverty rate is very, very high in the downtown area. As a consequence of that, successive governments, provincial, federal, and municipal, have invested literally tens of millions of dollars into the downtown area over the last 3 decades to stimulate residential stability, to ameliorate the worst effects of the poverty that's felt in the downtown area, and to support the downtown business community in revitalizing Brandon's downtown commercial core. So I speak to this issue from a macro public policy perspective. The province, the city, and the feds, as I said, have put in tens of millions of dollars into the downtown core over the last number of years to stabilize both the residential and commercial sectors in the downtown area. There are 2 community organizations that are established, one for the Renaissance Brandon, or the Downtown Neighborhood Renewal Corporation for the commercial core, and the Downtown Renewal Corporation for the residential core, and what was Renaissance Brandon now is a development corporation for the commercial core, are the 2 organizations that exist now working to help redevelop the core. So we're confronted with, in the downtown area, the highest crime rates, the highest levels of poverty, and a very distressed population, the most distressed population in our community. The Park Community Center is the single most important cultural asset available to Brandon's most deprived citizens. And it's from that perspective, from the perspective of macro public policy, that I speak to the issue of restoring and redeveloping the community center. That center is an affordable 24/7, 365 day of the year community asset. It's a critical piece of community infrastructure for Brandon's most disadvantaged population. It's used extensively. I've lived across the street from the community center all of my life, at 15th Street, right across the center. That center is busy all the time. It's changed, obviously, because of COVID, and it's changed dramatically since the ceiling of 40 people for use that was put in place about a year and a half ago. But those two factors, the pandemic's not going to be here forever, and the need to redevelop the center to get it back into circulation for the community is more needed than ever today. With, as I said, with the high crime rate in the core and with the instability that the core area is currently and has been going through for the last number of years. So over the course of time, this center has been taken on an increasingly important role in residential stability in this downtown area, and for that reason, and for the reason that it corresponds with all the public policy initiatives and all the public policy objectives of the three levels of government in supporting the downtown residential and downtown commercial sector, I really make the case that from a public policy perspective, the reinvestment in the community center to stabilize it and to allow it to continue to exist well into the future has never been more important. Closing the center, or demolishing the center, would be it would fly in the face of every single dollar and every single initiative that has been invested in the Park Community Center over the last 30 years, and it would be a catastrophic blow, in my view. It would be a catastrophic blow to a community that already is very disadvantaged in Brandon and cannot afford to have any further impacts negatively affected. So I would argue from a public policy perspective that investing in Park Community Center, whether it's $100,000 or $200,000, probably the best money that the city could spend in terms of providing consistency in the city's own public policy initiatives and to support the people that live in Brandon's most impoverished and most crime-ridden area. So I guess I would just wrap up by saying that the city would be true to the last 30 years of investments in downtown by supporting the community center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Caldwell, or Drew, and I'm glad you stopped short earlier in the presentation when you spoke of our activities in our early 20s for the downtown area, that you at least didn't say how long ago that was. And that would age us. So thank you to Drew and Jennifer both for those presentations. So a little bit unorthodox, so I'm going to provide a bit of latitude to council. Questions can kind of put out there broadly, and either party could answer them, or you could supply questions specifically to either presenter, so to speak. We just had a little bit of confusion how we had it set up on the agenda, so we'll provide a bit of latitude. So we'll open the floor now for questions of either or both presenters. And Councillor Cameron, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to probably Jen, if I could. Just wondering, obviously we have history as well with the Central Council of Community Centers. Wondering, in your feeling, is there a stable operating organization there now? Is there a stable board? Is there stable sort of regular renters that you could attract back into the place when COVID hopefully steps back? Just wondering about the viability from the actual day-to-day standpoint. I know being involved in a community center for a number of years as well, those are the challenges that are met day-to-day, far beyond any sort of repair or remediation work. Just wondering if there is a stable board structure and if there is a rental base that you feel it would keep the center sustainable.
Yes, thank you for that question. I do definitely, 100% believe that there would be, once we got the board that we have now is anywhere from 8 to 10 people, which has been they're showing up, they're helping out, they're consistent. We have meetings 1 or 2 times a week over, of course, on virtual. So that's been positive. That's been feeling absolutely amazing. When we joined this board back a few years ago, we were looking to create a community. We volunteer at the YMCA, and we do as much as we can in our community to be of service and to be available. In the Park Community Center, there was a lot going on there then, and we joined in hopes that we could create a structure and have a community. That's feeling absolutely amazing. When we joined this board, what's going on here? Feedback. And so we had socials, we had lots of renters before it was getting to the point where once we got our charity status back up was when the threat of closing the center happened, kind of 2016, 2017. So then everything changed because we weren't able to rent. It was changing, and once we were, and even going back in history and seeing how they had to make cookbooks and do different fundraising again to get the community involved. And I feel like that is where we are again. Once we have a building, that it's still to this day. We went there to make sure the sidewalk was clear just yesterday or the day before. And walking in there still has such a good feel. It's not, oh, this has been sitting, it doesn't feel good. It still has such good energy in there. So then once it is fixed up, then it will be so much easier to promote. And that's one of the things, where people weren't able to see events, and, just so many things that the board is willing to give their time to. And that's the nice thing it's that, I can contact them all, from morning until now, and they're available. And that's such a good feeling. So I do believe, yes, absolutely. And like in the presentation, saying that it would be really nice to be able to create that manual. We have a business and we have an employee manual. So when we have a new employee, we say, this is our expectations and this is what you expect from us. So then when we came on board and there was no charity status and everything was all over, and that happens, but it was a learning curve. It took over 2 years to get even through to the CRA, and then we were just rejoicing when it was like, yes, we're charity status again, and it's so, and now having others involved, it's a really good feeling.
Well, thank you very much, through your worship, for that. And like I say, regardless of what direction this does go, I want to commend you and your board members for that effort, because I know it's a Herculean task, and I will give you all the credit in the world for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Next I have Councillor Cullen and then Councillor Chaboyer. So go ahead, Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our presenters. I've had conversations with people throughout the community, and some of the numbers as far as what it would take to repair certain areas become sort of become a topic of conversation. We've heard anything from our guys who quote out from the city getting, kind of what we would have to do in order to bring it up to standards versus somebody that would maybe like to, a contractor that might want to do some community service and help out and, do those kind of things. So have you explored the options as far as compared quotes as far as what it would take in order to bring the for example, the floor up to code and those kind of things? Have you had conversations with different contractors that are out there?
Thank you. Yes, we have. We have reached out to and even through this time, we kind of took a little break. We were getting a lot of quotes at the beginning, you know, when it was our floating floor was going to be fixed, and then noticing the hardwood floor, you know, we had our quotes and our contractors coming in then. And then when the engineer and when they were starting to do the walkthroughs, that's when we kind of stepped back a little bit. Although in this last summer, before the summer, we've reached out to BEEP, we've reached out to Sneath, and you know, BEEP is such a cool organization. You know, working, we had a tour when I was in with Hope at the BNRC, and so yes, we have been, and we're absolutely more than interested to be part of that as well. You know, it's very important that we can be included in that if possible, to getting the quotes and through the entire process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Chaboyer is next.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to let you know that I think that Park Community Center does have a special heartbeat for the community, and growing up in Brandon, I've attended many socials there, poetry readings, election events, lectures, all different types of socials, and I think you know, the Park Community Center did offer a lot to the city of Brandon and its citizens. What I want to ask you about is the occupancy. What would be your minimum occupancy? Because like I said, I've attended many events, and sometimes you can get 20 people. When we were doing folk festival events, there could be 100 plus. To make it successfully work, what would be your minimum occupancy required? And also, the other question I have for you is I know that they bandied about the number of $85,000 to demolish the building. What do you think could be best done with $85,000 to perhaps sustain the center or get it up and running? Just some thoughts around those two issues. And this could be either for Drew or, you know, for you, Jen.
Okay, so we were operating at 143 when we first started out, and that was packing the center. You know, it was they've had different events in there, and it just the way that they laid it out was so neat. For some events, because they were reaching capacity and they were at capacity. So being set down to 40, that made a huge difference. It was we had our church group, and we still had the fitness, and we had other events going on in there, but it just wasn't the same as our socials and even the elections. That day I was in there and I was counting and, you know, making sure, and even that was difficult. So $85,000 would for sure the floor, you know, our wheelchair ramp, we really need to fix that. And with the money that with our fundraising, you know, of course we're looking at, you know, our doors. We've gotten different quotes from the doors, but the floor where there is the wheelchair entry would be definitely very important. HVAC, the air quality, you know, having fans, you know, a fan in the basement, and getting that. We've ripped all the mold out of out of the furnace room. So that's been huge. And we went in there and Eldon, you know, that was just so great that day. We went in there and he just ripped it out. He knew exactly what he was doing, patched the furnace room. And, you know, that in itself has been, we've been so thankful, you know, to have people that are experienced. We are still renters, so it's not like we're not experienced to rip a hole in the wall and see how to fix it. So we do rely on, people that are specialized in that field. It's important that we stick to getting quotes, and so, yeah, hopefully that answered okay.
Okay.
And I think Drew also has his hand up on that one, Councillor Chaboy, so go ahead, please, Drew.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just, in order, I'll start with Barry's comments about seeking community donations. We do have a Revenue Canada number, I think unique amongst community centers in Brandon, that was gotten by Mary Gooden, George Gooden's wife, many years ago in the 60s, during another time when Park Community Center was doing some major renovations. So we do have a taxable charitable status, Barry, and I have chatted with a number of people in the community about giving in-kind contributions, construction contractors, and there is an interest in that. The community center has been around for so long that most everybody that's been born and raised in Brandon at one time or another has spent considerable time at Park Community Center. So there's a lot of fondness for the center, and there's a lot of interest in providing support from a contractor level to get use the Revenue Canada status to leverage 30-cent dollars and 40-cent dollars. So that was just an answer to your earlier question. And this is for multiple contractors, not just one or two. And then speaking to Jan now, the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries have determined that 143, as Jennifer said, is the capacity for the center, Jan. Many times, in fact, most times when the center was rented for community groups prior to the restriction of 40 people being put on it, the center, 140 people was a commonplace in the center. So it was a very well-used center before the restriction of 40 people was put on it, and I fully expect that to be the case again in the future. As I said, this is an affordable center for people who live in the downtown core area. It's a very well-used, extensively well-used center. Even today, people are using the center still at the 40 limit, and as Jennifer said, when Elections Canada was in there the last election, we had people on the ground there making sure that the center could still be used with that 40 person limit. So that has been our major problem. So if you're going to phase a construction project for the center and go through in sequential order, what would be first, second, third on the list? It would be getting the floor stabilized to begin with, to get that rental capacity up again. Of course, it's all moot right now because of COVID, but once COVID passes, that would be the most important thing, would be get that capacity back to the level where a lot of the renters that we lost when it went down to 40, because we lost a number of renters when it went down, they want to come back. They do want to come back. So you would start with the most limiting factor, which is the load bearing on the floors, and then as Jennifer said, you'd move through the other areas, the handicapped access, which we've got right now, but it needs to be upgraded. And then there are a number of other areas that need to be done, but that would be the first and foremost if you were going to do it in sequential. I think, though, that we should do we should do it all. If it's not a large sum of money, I referenced the tens of millions of dollars that three levels of government put into initiatives in the downtown area over the last few decades. $300,000 is not a large amount of money. I would rather do it all, but if we were going to do it sequentially, we've got to do it so that we can get that capacity up again. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mr.
for the
Caldwell.
clarity on that. Yeah. Thanks for the clarity on that. Thank you.
Very good. I don't have other hands up, but I probably have a question or two, or maybe even a comment, I guess, myself. And, I think that, maybe the city council and city administration, sort of has ended up looking like, kind of the bad guys here, like we were just kind of setting up to go out and close down community centers and, kind of pull the heart out of a neighborhood and kind of destroy all this, great fondness and, all of the great memories that many of us have had over the years. And certainly that, kind of wasn't the case. It was just a matter of discovering, a significant amount of, very major deficiencies of the building that our staff and, inspection department had found, and, kind of getting estimates and adding up to a very significant sum of money. So, I mean, that's kind of really what got us to this point. It wasn't like, well, let's just kind of close down a community center. That certainly, I don't think anybody on council or administration has any motivation like that. It was really just then to sort of square and really almost like to take the two scenarios that we've been through recently, like the Valley View scenario, the, sort of the building experts, if you want to call it that, kind of looked at it and said, well, this is actually, kind of very sound building. Otherwise, it has these deficiencies, and this is going to be what it would cost, and it would be very much worth it to put that amount of money into that building. And then the same analysis originally presented was just the fact that that this was kind of more than potentially the building was worth, and probably a poor analogy, but when your mechanic comes to you, with your kind of old car, and you kind of say, well, is it worth putting a new engine in this car? And they say, well, no, the cost of the repairs of your car are be worth more than the vehicle is worth. Now, that said, a lot of times people still do that because the car means something to them, and so this may be where Park Community Center ends up for our community and for our council. So, I mean, it's going to be obviously a difficult decision to make, and that's why we've been gathering input, and we're going to be hearing about that input here shortly from Heather Reimer. But I would have a question. Probably it's for Jen. Does the community center, especially with all of the initiative and all of the kind of outpouring of involvement, so do you feel the community center board and your volunteers, do they have an appetite to want to be now programming, or really just returning to being a solid landlord, kind of at the full capacity? And, some community centers are really doing a lot of the programming, and other community centers are the landlord and allowing the community to be, coming up with the community programming. So I'm not sure what has evolved, what has come out of all of your kind of meetings and the like. That might be revealed in Heather's presentation, but you folks have done a great deal of work and information gathering, so I'm curious as to what the feeling is that way.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I do believe that with a structured, with a board, if we have members come in, we're looking out to our community and we're looking for new members constantly to come in, especially once our repairs are being done. If we have a structure, if we say, okay, you can either, sit on the board and be a person that votes, or you can, ideally separating with the BNRC and the grants that we've had before. We have had a separate group that has we've reached out to the community, and they've come on and said, yeah, you know what, I want to do these art flow workshops. I have lots of connections. I want to work with you on this, but I don't want to be a board member. So then, if we can have a structure in place that we have a board and we have good backup, then absolutely, I do believe that it will be continual, because we'll leave. And when I was managing a hair salon and I was moving away, the employees took over because of you find their best assets, and then they're able to contribute in a way. And it's the same with running up until this point, it seemed like we just had a big gap. It was like people weren't interested. They were kind of doing their own thing. It was sitting, not being repaired maybe as much. Everything was changing. And so then once that hype is back again, then, oh yeah, I strongly believe that there will be a board that will. We have neighbors that have just moved in, a young neighbor with children. They're close by. It's reaching out to the community again in a way, and feeling confident to do that. Maybe going door to door. I'm from a small village. I have no problem talking to people. If that's what we need to do in our neighborhood to see who wants to come on board, we'll absolutely do that. So it's being consistent and finding consistency, and in a board, we need consistency, and finding the people that want to be a part of it and being able to contribute. That we were looking for community, and that's when the Park Community Center, we're looking for people to join. And then we joined and everybody left, and it was like, no, come back. So, we went through that, and now it's all of a sudden, you have 8 to 10 people and more interested. We have 2 more ladies that are interested. So yes, I do believe absolutely, especially with a plan in place, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, but I do want to give anybody the last opportunity before we close this off. Great, obviously a lot of passion on the part of both presenters here, and I would almost say old passion, no reflection on your age, Drew, and new passion, but people that have been around the community center for a long time, such as Mr. Caldwell, and then kind of newer kind of rebirth of interest from the Mose family and others. So thank you very much. So not seeing any other hands up, I would thank all of you folks for presenting and spending time with us tonight at council. And again, we'll kind of work our way through this issue. It's certainly not an easy one, but a very important one. So thank you very much for your input. So a motion to receive would be in order, please. Moved by Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through your worship. Oh, hold on.
Go ahead.
Am I unmuted? Great. Sorry, I had to check. I didn't want to hear you're muted. So sorry. One sec. That the presentation from Jennifer Mose and Drew Caldwell regarding the Park Community Center building renewal be received.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Chaboyer. Whoever wishes to speak.
Well, only that I'm holding my questions actually for administration. I want to thank Drew and Jennifer for sharing their insight and their energy and commitment to the park this evening, and optimistic that we're going to put our heads together and come up with something that's sustainable for the park and for this area of the city.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. Did the seconder wish to speak? She took her hand down now. So. Go ahead if you wanted to.
Oh, thank you, Worship. I just want to thank the presenters for the presentation, and hopefully we can have a robust discussion after Heather's presentation too, to clarify what the next stages might be for our community center. So thank you to the presenters.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to receive? Not seeing any. We're going to call for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And next item, please.
Also under the order of delegations, Your Worship, we have Heather Reimer, the Manager of Recreation, to provide an update on the Park Community Center public consultations.
Very good. Welcome to Heather, and we'll let you just dive right into it.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you for having me here this evening. So I am here also to talk about Park Community Center. So to give you a bit of background around kind of the chain of events that have been occurring at Park Community Center. So in 2017, community center condition assessments were completed by the city's building safety department to outline any deficiencies that were in any of the centers. In 2018, the community center assessments were shared with the Central Council of Community Centers and with City Council. There was several deficiencies noted in Park Community Center that were of concern. Throughout 2018, there was exploration on options for repair. We did work with an engineer consultant in Brandon to look at some of those options for repair for the structure, the floor structure piece of things. And there was also some public consultation on community centers via the Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan. In 2019, late in 2019, there was a report to City Council with a recommendation to demolish Park Community Center. However, City Council did request that administration goes back, speaks with the community, and gathers more information. In 2020, after a few COVID-related cancellations, we did finally have our public engagement regarding Park Community Center this fall. And right now, 2021, we're going to have the report to Council. So a bit more background. In 2019, the report to Council included building deficiencies such as mechanical HVAC upgrades, roof structure repair, electrical work, demolition of the skate shack. There was structural supports, which is the floor structure, and accessibility upgrades for an estimated cost of $300,000+. We talked about the facility usage rates. That was 9 hours of regular rentals per week plus 50% of weekends booked. And this was the numbers in 2018 prior to the occupancy being reduced, which occurred in 2019. We covered the proximity to other recreation facilities such as community centers and the Cultural Resource Center. And we talked a bit about the strategic alignment with the 2019 Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan, including the consolidation of community centers and decommissioning of Park Community Center. So from that report, we did go forward. We had public engagement and consultation. So we had a public survey that was open from October 22nd to November 12th and received nearly 140 responses. We were happy with that outcome. That is a good number for a public survey. And the results were mixed on whether people wanted to see the center repaired or demolished. We also hosted webinar sessions on December 17th. We had 16 individuals attending, excluding administration and City Council, and an additional 4 people offered thoughts via phone or email, and a very strong desire to repair Park Community Center was expressed during those webinars. So before we get into what those actual results of the survey and the webinar are, I just wanted to show a quick map here. So what this is every person who took the survey. This is a plot on the map of Brandon based on their postal code. So I just thought that was important to note, and it was something that we talked about during the webinars. There certainly is a cluster of people that took the survey in the downtown area, but of course there's also that spread, and you'll see in the south and north, east and west ends, there are people that took the survey that may or may not use the facility in question. So I just wanted to bring that forward as well before we got into the results. So part of the recommendation for Park Community Center was based on that recreation facility master plan. And we do talk about in the master plan the hub model for the city of Brandon for recreation facilities and amenities. So we wanted to know how people felt about the hub model. 44% of survey respondents were previously aware of the hub model. 40% felt it was effective for the city of Brandon, but 42% felt that it was ineffective, and a greater number of smaller standalone facilities spread out throughout the city would be more ideal for those folks. When we talked about the hub model in the webinar sessions, participants did feel that the hub model was somewhat effective, but that the downtown is unique and should have its own dedicated hub. We also talked, as Drew mentioned in his presentation, we talked about the large low-income population and that services and amenities should be enhanced as opposed to decreased to help address crime, safety, and quality of life in the downtown core. Facility usage was also an important piece of the discussion. We wanted to know how people were using the center, how often, what they were doing there. So we did ask people under normal circumstances, pre-COVID and pre-structural issues, how often they'd attended programs or events at Park Community Center. 38% was the largest, and they had not attended in over 10 years or had never attended. 15% had attended multiple times in the past 6+ years. 14% in the past 1 to 5 years, 25% felt that they attended multiple times per year, 5 at multiple times per month, and a little under 1% attended the center multiple times per week. In speaking about facility usage at the webinar sessions, participants felt that the center is well used, but felt that they did lose many rentals when capacity was reduced in 2019, and that would be certainly significantly the weekend events that were large social gatherings. There was the suggestion of the center being used as a 24-hour permanent infrastructure that could be used year-round to support the high-density, low-income population. We did hear that the community center board members wanted to have increased attendance as one of their goals with a focus on arts and programming. And we did have individuals indicate a desire for senior programming during the day, particularly with the close proximity of Hobbs Manor. Next in the survey, we asked what type of programs or events people were attending at Park Community Center. So the largest response was social events or programs, so musical performances, craft sales. The next largest group indicated that they had not attended Park Community Center, and then shortly behind in third place there we had recreation events or programs, so that would be things like yoga, dance, card groups, things of that nature. We also asked participants in the survey what other community facilities they utilize in the city of Brandon. Nearly 60% indicated that they do utilize other community centers. 73% indicated that they use recreational facilities such as Brand's Community Sportsplex, the YMCA, or the Healthy Living Center. And 55% indicated they use rental halls that are not owned by the city, and that would be halls such as the Ukrainian Reading Hall or the Legion. Other notes that came from the webinar sessions surrounding facility usage, participants felt that 18th Street provided a barrier to use of facilities such as the West End Community Center or the Healthy Living Center. They did note that Park Community Center does fall under the Brandon Neighborhood Renewal Corporation District and is eligible for funding for community projects or programming. And that with Stanley Park Recreation Hub in close proximity, the center is ideally located with all of those recreation amenities nearby. So when we asked people what was important to them in a community center, in the public survey, some of the biggest responses we got back were accessible indoor space, affordability, location, a family or community setting, activities and events being offered, community gardens being available, and just simply access to the center. In the webinar session, affordability was also highlighted as an important part for groups using the Park Community Center, and that the location and walkability were really important in the downtown area. And again, that speaks to some of that lower income demographic that we see in the core area. Because community centers really need some conversation as a whole, not just about Park Community Center, but as all of them. We also asked how people felt community center operations should be funded. So the highest level here was that the City of Brandon should mostly fund community centers, while the community center boards themselves contributed some funds. And then the middle response here was that community centers and the City of Brandon should equally fund the operations of community centers. with the City of Brandon fully funding at 12% and community centers mostly funding at 18%. So most felt that the City of Brandon should be either cost sharing or taking on a little bit more of the load as compared to the community center boards themselves. In the webinar sessions, we heard that participants agreed that the City of Brandon and community centers should equally fund operations, or the City of Brandon should mostly fund the operations. We touched on this a little bit when Jen gave her presentation, but in the past years, community center volunteers have certainly been pushed more and more towards a caretaker role than that of community programming, and that's something we've certainly noticed, and we've seen a desire from the boards we have in place right now to get back to that community programming and have less of a role when it comes to that caretaking. Some of the projects that come up are very large in scope, and there's something you would want a project manager or contract administrator looking at, and we've left that to our volunteers in some cases. I will say in the past 3+ years, we have been doing a better job at getting, as the City of Brandon, at getting involved in some of those larger projects and helping to give guidance and support when those projects are coming up. So this slide shows what the structural concerns are, and these are based on that community center assessment report. So we do have some roof structure issues, demolition of the skate shack. So the skate shack is leaning and pulling on the building. We have structural support, so we have a picture of the floor joist there, what's holding the floor up. Mechanical and HVAC upgrades, electrical work, and then just noted in the bottom there is the cost of demolition of the building. So these are the main structural concerns that need to be addressed, and they do come with an estimated price tag of $300,000 at a minimum. Structural concerns in the public survey, we had very, very mixed results. Some participants felt that the center was too old to consider repair and that it had served its time, and some felt it was very important to repair the center. So we had very split results there. In webinar sessions, we did have participants who felt that the estimated cost of repairs were overinflated, and there was some feeling of mistrust as to where some of those numbers came from. They are based on estimates from either the engineer who looked at the structural issues early on, and as well as related or similar projects that have taken place over the last couple of years. We certainly need to consider the fact that we need to have structural engineers and mechanical engineers involved because these are very large scale issues within this building. We did speak that there may be contractors or engineers in Brandon who are community minded and would like to contribute their skills towards repairing the center. And we did have some comments that individuals were not tied to that building itself, but felt a replacement facility would be needed in the area if it were to be demolished. So we did talk in the webinars about future possibilities, and this is a fun conversation to have when we're looking at, exciting things like a new building, but also difficult in the fact that there hasn't been any planning or saving towards building a new community center. But this is something that was highlighted in the Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan and was discussed a little bit as well during the webinar sessions. So in our master plan, we were shown a community center in Winnipeg, the Mayfair Recreation Center, which is a new build. It costs between 2.5 and 3 million. It is about 500 square feet larger than the Park Community Center. And as you can see from some of the pictures, it does have, a high mix of costly amenities as well. So that may be slightly higher than what we would be looking at as a new build, but that was discussed as well, based on some of those comments I made earlier where people were not necessarily tied to that building, but certainly to that location, to having a place for community members to go in the downtown area. Earlier suggested, based on the Recreation Master Plan, was that the building would be demolished and that and green space would be left behind. The master plan does say that priority should be given to preserve any former community center lands as green spaces for public use, and other development opportunities may also be considered, such as affordable housing. So this is a little site plan, but this is not anything we have put time or planning efforts into at this point until we know what the outcome would be. It's just a little conceptual design here. And then the future steps. So based on administration's previous recommendation to demolish Park Community Center, the 2021 capital budget does have $85,000 in it right now that could be used towards that or towards any other projects in Park Community Center that are decided to move forward. Based on the feedback received at the public engagement and on council's consideration, if we do choose to repair the center, additional funding will be required. We touched on this evening as well, and I believe that community center operating agreement needs further consideration and finalization. This is something that was looked at in 2016, I would say, and was never finalized, but I do feel that it's an important piece of the puzzle and does start to move us more towards community center boards being highly involved in programming and serving the community as opposed to having the caretaker role. And then just as a little bit of additional information, there is a feasibility study for the City of Brandon community centers earmarked in the 2020 budget. And that feasibility study is kind of leaning towards the investment and renewal of community centers piece that is talked about in the Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan. So that is the information I have for you this evening. And I can open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much, Heather. Very thorough, great slide deck, a lot of information there that we'll likely have to refer back to, again, in the future. So thanks for all that. And leading us right off is Councillor Desjarlais, who is the ward councillor, of course. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, through your worship, and thank you to Heather, and thank you, Heather, for a lot of the work that you and your staff have put into this for the public engagement. I thought you handled those conversations very well, and this is not it's not an easy conversation to be having when there's the lifeblood of the centers on the line, right? And so I just wanted to give you a shout out for that. In speaking about the overall costs associated to repair, and we're always talking about 300,000+, right? And I know that there are often cost overruns, right? When we're estimating these things, I think Valley View ended up being more money than we anticipated. So there is a history to that. But I'm also wondering about other factors that don't go into that equation: sweat equity, volunteers, community people, Drew and Jen both touched on that. There's some variables there that hard to equate right now. And so I'm just wondering, what our options would be if we decided to go ahead with repairs, right? And we contract these things out, or we put these out to tender or something. What options do we have from a city standpoint, from a community center standpoint, to have BEEP come in and do the work, have volunteers come in and do the work? I'm wondering if you could elaborate and help us out with that.
Sure, I'll start off, and then I might rely on Murray Fisher as well, our building safety manager, who's on the line to fill in any gaps that I might leave behind. So if we choose to do these repairs at Park Community Center, really the next step is detailed design work. So we would have to go out for a firm to do the detailed design work for this project because it is complicated. It does include structural and mechanical and likely even architecture services to complete this work. So that would be our first step. I did have a little bit of a brief conversation with Ms. Larice, our procurement manager, about how we would tackle some of these community organizations that may want to assist with us. At the end of the day, if we're using mostly city funds because of the large scope of this project, we do fall under procurement rules and we do need to follow fair practices. That certainly wouldn't exclude BEEP or another group from coming in and making maybe a lower bid because they did want to donate some of their time or services. So that would be the first step. Once we had some of that detailed design work for the contractor step, so that the contractors could complete that work, there are some options. We can certainly look at tendering it out in a way that would allow people to bid on one piece of the puzzle as opposed to bidding on the whole package. So if there was maybe a group that were really interested in coming in at a low price or coming in and proposing that instead of paying them to do any accessibility upgrades, perhaps there's some naming rights. You know, people could make a proposal such as that to us. So there is wiggle room through the RFP process to maybe reap some of those benefits of some of the community-minded organizations we've been talking about.
Thank you for that. My follow-up would be, we're saying, 300 plus. The recommendation was that would be more than what this building is currently valued at, I'm guessing. And you've thrown out, you've given us an example of another building a little bit larger with a gym, which would certainly not be required at the park, right? So I would, and I don't know if this has been done, but, we're going into budget deliberations. I know there's, I certainly feel like there's an appetite from, a majority of council at this point to do what we can to repair, to save the park, but it's got to make sense, right? And so, I'm wondering if between now and then, and I know that this is short time, but if we could, ballpark a Class C or Class B on what it would actually be to build something just like what the park is, and like a utilitarian building the way it is, but a nice sound build. Is it double the 300? Is it triple? And have that for council to deliberate on, because if that is the case, and if we think that that's that might be something we might entertain. I would rather us have all of our options on the table rather than we either repair, demolish, or go to a $3.5 million community center.
Yes, we can certainly work on something like that. We have had some discussions with engineering and building safety on what a new build would look like. And of course, that Mayfair example that we've given, it's very state of the art. It's very functional, which is good. But yeah, in some ways it does look excess. When we looked at it very, very preliminary, we certainly weren't at that 2.5 million. We were certainly well below that when we did some estimating, but we will dig a little deeper and try and get something a little closer to reality and provide that to City Council prior to budget deliberations.
Thank you. And then if the mayor could allow me just one more quick question related to two things. First off, right now we have 85. They have 75 plus, I think 10. They said we're at about 160, 170,000 already right now, right? Without adding any additional money in there. So that's sort of where we're at right now. We talked about the skate shack, and it's pulling away from the building. There's no saving the skate shack. That's what we're saying. There's just no way to shore that up to keep that for storage. It's got to come down because it's a safety hazard. Is that what we're to believe?
I'm going to defer that to Murray. If you're on the line, our manager of building safety, he probably has a better answer for you than I.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Desjardins, that kind of work certainly wouldn't be impossible, but it certainly would be an expensive endeavor to take on.
Like more than the 20 grand to demolish it?
That's tough to say without knowing what an engineer would come up with.
That's fair, Marie. And I get that we might not have done that. I just think that we might want to be comparing that, right? Because we're looking at 20 grand to take the skate shack out versus, 12 grand to shore it up, that makes, and if we're going to try and repair it, then it makes sense for us to do that, right? And it's, it does have some value to keeping that when it comes to storage and things of that nature. Or if they ever wanted to open that area back up to skating again, right? I mean, it'd be nice to have that opportunity, so.
Yeah, like if I was to just give a quick off the top of my head estimate, it'd probably be about the same cost as demolishing the shack.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Thanks, Councillor Desjardins. And now I've got Councillor Cullen, followed by Councillor Parker. Go ahead, Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm craving some numbers right now, and so I'm sort of looking for the process of where we can kind of firm some of this stuff up a little bit. I know that you're saying that we could go out for some tenders or have a different class of a estimate done. Do we have numbers that like our initial estimates, like as far as what it would cost to do the HVAC, what it would cost to do the floor, what it would cost to do those kind of things? Do we have that in a scale that maybe you could fire off to me? I know that you probably did that before, but I'm craving to drill down in this a little bit more right now, just to sort of see where we're at.
Yes, absolutely. We do have estimated numbers for each of those pieces of work, so we can get that your way along with some of the other information that's been requested here this evening.
Great. And just a follow-up, going back to Councillor Desjardins' sort of comment of almost a Habitat for Humanity kind of build where, people are all donate, 6 yards of concrete and find some concrete guy will all donate 8 hours of work and those kind of things of trying to, put that kind of stuff together. I know that that's outside the scope of how the city would do this, but I'm just trying to find the hybrid of in between the two, sort of like what Councillor Desjardins was sort of getting at. I understand that gets a little quicksandy for the city, but, when we're, but I'm still looking for a solution there.
Yeah, so I agree there is opportunity there. And there certainly has been opportunity in the past for work that has been directed by the community centers as opposed to directed by the city. We all have that idea in our head that sometimes when the city releases an RFP, people think big pockets and start to inflate some of those prices, whereas, the community members that use the community centers who might own a business may be willing to do that work for a reduced rate. It gets tricky with this project in particular because it is such a large scope and it is such a technical project that needs to be undertaken. But we will certainly have, in the information that we send you, we'll certainly have Ms. Lurie make some comments on how we might find a mix of the two.
Yeah. And again, just to sort of clarify, I know that we've done kind of work bees when it comes to playground construction and everybody gets together and within parent organizations and yes, the structure is engineered. Yes, it's approved by our people, but everybody gets together and ends up either putting up a play structure. And I've just got this vision in my head that everybody gets together and builds a wheelchair ramp. It just seems like it's and it's community based. That's kind of what this is all about. So I'm just trying to hook the two things together so that we end up being community based. You got community buy-in, and we get it done for a little less money than or more fair for taxpayers. So anyway, I'm looking for a hybrid right now, and I'm not being able to put it together. So.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Cullen. Carry on. I've got Councillor Parker, then Councillor Lupke so far.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Heather, I'm just looking for some clarification. I may found some of it. I know you said 16 people attended the 2 webinars. Is that 16 different individuals, or I know there was 2 webinars, so if I was in the morning and in the afternoon, are you counting me twice or once?
I'm counting you once, so individuals, and then that also didn't count any of the members of council or administration that were in attendance.
Right, yeah, that's okay. I just wanted clarification on the number. It's not a big issue one way or the other, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Lupke is next.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Heather. Just a question, Heather, in regards to lifespan of the community center. If, in fact, we were to repair it, do you have an estimate on lifespan for the community center following the repairs?
I'm going to defer that to Murray, again, our building safety manager, to see if he can make comment on it. And I will say that that's certainly been one of the things we've, considered, is between talking about repairing a new build, a demolish, and just return to green space, is that this is a very old building. As much as there is a need for community programming and there is that history and tie into usage, none of us want to be in a position, in 10 years from now, we're having the same discussion about another building. So it certainly is a consideration, and I'll pass it to Marie now to see if he has any comment on that lifespan piece.
Through your worship to Councillor Lupke, there is no reason to believe that any major upgrades or improvements to the existing community center wouldn't extend the life of the building probably past 50 years. Having that said, that would be, we're talking about engineered ventilation system and structural and components and that sort of thing. There should be no reason to expect it to last at least 50 years.
Hey, thanks for that. I just have a couple of other questions and then a comment. Any idea what design work would cost alone?
Design work, we're typically looking, I would say, at a minimum of 10%, upwards of 20%.
So we're thinking $30,000 to $50,000 then.
Potentially. We do have some background information from some preliminary investigation that was done earlier. Whether or not that would assist the organization that was chosen to move forward with detailed design work or not is yet to be seen.
And just, I guess, I don't know if this is a question or more of a comment, but you showed the Mayfair Center as kind of an example. That's probably the Cadillac version, and we'd be looking more for the Malibu version for community centers, if I can use that car analogy. And I would also suggest when we, and obviously I don't have the background in construction or renovations like some of other members of council might have, but I would suggest that when we start talking about sweat equity and volunteerism for the community center and that Habitat for Humanity model, that effort might be better served in a new build rather than a complicated rebuild or renovation of the current community center. So I think that's part of the consideration for me when we start talking about if the center is to be demolished, we need to have a plan of what's the next thing going to be, and that's part of the consideration when we talk about that next thing to me. Because my struggle is not whether or not there needs to be something there to serve the community, but if the existing building is what is best serving the community moving forward. So thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. I do have Councillor Chaboy next, but before I ask Jan, just to springboard on Councillor Lupke's last question, it's a little bit along Councillor Cullen's hybrid line. As and either Murray or Heather can answer this, if looking at the design versus renovations, whatnot, and maybe conversations you've had with Ms. Lurie from procurement, do we ever look at sort of a design build approach to something like this, which is probably a little difficult in renovations? I'm not sure, maybe Murray might know a little bit more about this angle, that we would just sort of putting out there. The scope is, we need to bring this up to standard, up to code, and so on and so forth. And therefore, we're seeking proposals from companies that can both, they have the in-house capabilities of properly designing and doing the building, and know the most expedient and cost-effective way of doing things. Any thoughts on that, either of you?
Your Worship, our experience in those types of projects, those design builds are usually get from larger companies. I'm not saying that they're more expensive, but what you'll have is typically a team that would have an in-house architect, structural engineer, mechanical engineer, and that sort of thing. So typically those types of bids would come from larger companies, and may not be necessarily suitable for like a hybrid or an economic solution, I suppose.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, then carrying on to Councillor Chaboyer. Go ahead, please. You're muted there, John.
Thanks, Heather, for the presentation and all the information. I agree with Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Lukey that in order for us to make the best decision for the community, it would be useful to put out an RFP for a new build, just to see what the numbers would look like, and like you were saying, something that would be a lot more basic and would be more fitting for our type of budget, and I think that the sooner the better, because you do already have the numbers on the renovations required for this old building. So I just wanted to put my comment out there that I'm interested in looking at what pricing would be for something new, and I'm not sure about how large the building would have to be. So yeah, thanks for that, and I hope you do include an RFP in the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Chaboyer. Not sure if Heather had any comment to that. It was more of a statement than a question. So I don't see any other hands up. So obviously there's a significant amount of interest, from council, and obviously the community. It's a very tricky situation. Administration's been working very hard to try and cobble all the information and the community sentiment together on this one, and I think council is certainly interested in trying to find a path that works for everybody. So again, there's obviously requests for information that will continue to work towards this. This will not sound like the last time that this is discussed, which is a good thing. And my view is always things that are worthwhile take a little bit of work, and we'll just keep cobbling away at this until we find the best solution. So for that, we could probably use a motion to receive. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Through your worship, I move that the presentation from Heather Reimer, Recreation Manager, with respect to an update on the Park Community Centre public consultations be received.
Thank you. And seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer, thank you. Who wishes to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not much more than what's already been said, and you pulled it together quite nicely. And I just hope that we can make a fulsome, thoughtful decision on this in the coming months.
Thanks. Well said. I think we're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you to everybody, including the presenters from the community earlier on, and look forward to seeing this take shape some way, somehow. Next item, please.
Also under delegations, Your Worship, we have a presentation from Glenn Crook on behalf of Community Health and Housing Association Westman Region regarding their affordable housing grant application for 23 12th Street.
Very good. I think I saw Mr. Crook's name on there on the screen here somewhere, so feel free to go ahead, please.
Good evening, everyone. Our organization has always received incredible support from the City of Brandon. With that support, along with provincial and federal grants, we have built 73 low-income apartments and 10 new step homes for low-income families in the city. As a result of this incredible support from the City of Brandon, we have been able to provide good quality, affordable housing for individuals and families who were homeless or who were living in substandard or unaffordable housing. Thank you for helping us to help some of the city's most vulnerable citizens. Although we have provided good quality housing for many, the need for affordable housing is still greater than the present supply. Therefore, we are requesting city support of $1,000 per apartment and a 50% tax offsetting grant in order to build 10 more low-income apartments in Brandon. We have applied to the Federal Rapid Housing Initiative as an additional funding source in order to pay for the lion's share of the construction costs. In that grant application, it is a requirement that financial support be received from the local municipality, and that is why our funding request is rather small, but at the same time, this funding request is essential in order for us to secure the much larger federal grant. It should be noted that even if the City Council approves our request for a 50% tax offsetting grant for 10 years, the taxes that we will be paying will still be much higher than they are now due to the future increased assessment which will be caused by this development. These 10 apartments would be built into the east section of the building refit store, and so those apartments would be facing 11th Street. On the first floor, we plan on building 5 wheelchair accessible bachelor apartments, and on the second floor, there will be 5 bachelor apartments. Each apartment would be approximately 300 square feet, and all these apartments would be rented at the provincial social assistance rate. The 5 apartments on the first floor will have a 3-piece wheelchair accessible bathroom, and the 5 apartments on the second floor will have a 4-piece bathroom. All 10 apartments will be air conditioned, and each will have a small kitchen with a sink, fridge, and microwave, but no stove. Tenants will be able to stay in these apartments long term, but we will assist any tenant who might want to move into a larger apartment, either into one of our 73 apartments or into community at large. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crook. Very succinct and certainly well laid out. Provided a great deal of information there, but we will open it up for questions. If any member of council has some questions of Mr. Crook, this will show up again on our agenda with additional information, but certainly this is the best opportunity to ask the project proponent questions at this time. So I'll open that up to council. I'll just ask one, and Glenn, just kind of squaring what portion of the refit building this is. So a portion of the refit building will remain refit, or what's the
vast majority? We would be taking 20 feet of the eastern section of the building refit. So on the main floor, there'd be another 80 feet of the store, both on the main floor and the second floor. So 1/5 of the building.
Good. Well, that probably, I tend to get down to the store periodically myself, and I know it's fairly popular in the community, and it itself, as you well know, serves an important function as well. So certainly this won't supplant that. It'll just sort of add to it. Thanks for that answer. Any other questions. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Crook. Sorry, my headphones had cut out a little bit there, and I may have missed this, but I was just wondering if all the stars align funding-wise, how long do you anticipate it would take to reach completion on this project?
With this federal grant, construction must be completed within 12 months.
So if I may, Your Worship, from the approval of the grant, or from the what kind of timeline? I'm just wondering from there.
April 1st. So starting April 1st is what we're looking at doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Without any other hands up, I guess the other question, I know that you have used, I guess your own crews, and then it's also partly a training program, if I'm not mistaken, to do quite a bit of the building you've done. Is that the model for this one, or is it under a little tighter time frame? Will this one just be contracted out? What's the plan for that?
Well, we've got a plan A and a plan B. Plan A, if we secure the federal grant, we have to do it very quickly. So in that situation, we've already secured a bid from Ben Weeb Construction, so they would be selected as being the contractor involved because they need to do it and do it fast. If we don't secure the federal grant, then what we're going to be looking at is self-financing the build. And if that's the case, then we can go much slower, and then we'd be using BEEP as our main contractor.
Thanks very much. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll receive the grant, and then that'll go fast and give some work to a contractor, and then we could get you and BEEP involved in. Ever done any community center renovations, Glenn? Trying to connect all the dots on our agenda here tonight, sorry. Not seeing any other hands up for questions, so I think we've got it pretty well covered off, Mr. Crook. Thank you very much for your presentation, and so stay tuned. So a motion to receive that presentation would be in order. The rest of it, Councillor Desjardins is moving that, seconded by Councillor Lupke. Any discussion? Not seeing any. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
The order of committee reports, Your Worship, I'm not aware of any, but there may be a verbal report.
Very good. Again, we haven't any on the agenda, but we'll take any verbal reports if there were to be some. Okay, not seeing any hands up. We can move to the next item, please.
The order of inquiries, Your Worship.
Order of inquiries. I've got Councillor Parker, I believe. Okay, well, I got
thank you, Your Worship.
Yep.
Thank you. I just I've received a few inquiries or concerns from residents regarding water pressure in the ward, mainly being less than sufficient. In a lot of cases, unable to run 2 appliances in a household at one time. So just wondering if there's any short-term fixes available or long-term plans to address the situation going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Parker, and I believe Acting City Manager Dean Hammond does have a response ready for us. I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Parker. This response has been provided by Alexia Stangerland, the Director of Utilities. Pressure within the water distribution system is continuously monitored at the water treatment facility and booster stations. However, it can be difficult to diagnose pressure concerns across an entire ward of the city. The water treatment facility will work proactively with sewer and water to install some temporary pressure gauges on hydrants in Ward 9 to see if there are any immediate indications of low pressure and what the cause might be. If residents with pressure concerns call the general inquiry line at 729-2186 or the water treatment facility and provide their address, staff can narrow down the area to investigate this further.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we've got Councillor Barry with his hand up, but go ahead, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, my inquiry is about sanding on the walking trails and sidewalks. With the extreme icy conditions we've been facing here in the city and on our roads and walkways, residents are finding it very difficult to go out for a leisurely walk these days when it is being encouraged to do so while we're in the code red restriction. I'm wondering if it is possible for city crews to sand the walking path trail system, possibly the more frequently used sidewalks in the city, so it will reduce the slip and falls occurring and provide a safer walking environment for the residents of our city. Now, as my inquiry was sent in yesterday, I noticed there's been a lot of social media today about the new trucks being out with the city, sanding sidewalks, clearing that. So if maybe we could just get a response and maybe a little bit of detail of how, what path we're taking this week in getting these walks in the areas done, so people have an idea of when they might be getting done in their area.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Barry. And again, back to Mr. Hammond, who has a response ready.
Through your worship to Councillor Barry, this response has been provided by Pam Richardson, the Director of Public Works. Given the recent weather, icy conditions have developed along our sidewalks and walking paths. Late last week, street crews began to apply sand with the recently purchased sanding boxes. This week, crews will continue to focus on applying sand to these areas and will begin with the P1A routes designated and will then move to P1. The City of Brandon snow clearing map for sidewalk and path clearing has been activated and will continue to be updated. Please refer to the site for up-to-date information on locations in progress and those that have been completed. Completion of the entire route system is expected by the end of the week, with crews monitoring conditions and the weather as they complete this work. And I also will note that I see Mr. Broom is online with us tonight if there are further questions about this.
Councillor Barry.
That's good. Thank you very much for the information.
Yeah, thank you. I think the Communications Department did issue a public service announcement about this very thing this morning, adding to your inquiry, Councillor Barry, so we'll help to get the information out there as well on this, and I think it will be well received by residents. As you pointed out, people are certainly enjoying getting used to these paths these winter for sure. Thank you for that one. And Councillor Chaboy.
Thank you, Worship. Is it possible for City Council to have a presentation in early spring on what programming will be available to the community this year under the new recreation hubs that were created last year? I know it will be limited with the COVID restrictions, but I think it would be useful to hear what types of programming are being considered this year through the hubs and also at the parks and the community centers. As well, I've received queries from citizens and volunteers at the community centers on what tentatively will happen this year. They definitely want to be part of the programming solution to happen at their centers and have events and activities that will consider all age groups and demographics. Just on that, I met with Chris Hees, who's is very active with the Green Acres Community Center, and Chris was mentioning that they're right on the front lines of being right on the pulse of the community there, and they would like to be part of the solution and be part of the programming part of it. So just would like at some point to have an update on that.
Very good. And again, back to Mr. Hammond, who does have a response for us.
Through your worship to Councillor Chaboyer, this response has been provided by Perry Rock, the Director of Parks and Recreation. Recreation Services will provide an overview report to Council in the spring of 2021. The 2020 reorganization of community services into Parks and Recreation Services saw the Sportsplex and Community Development come under one umbrella to form Recreation Services. While improvements in service delivery were made at the Sportsplex and to former community development programs, the core services offered to the community in both areas continued. The strategic directions and priorities moving forward, as based on the Recreation and Community Facilities Master Plan, were as follows: to invest in the renewal of municipal recreation facilities and to plan for future growth, to enhance municipal operational practices in the delivery of recreation services, to strengthen partnerships with recreation providers in the community, to improve public participation in recreation programs and services. While 2020 was not an ideal year to begin implementing these changes, we look forward to discussing the work that has been done to date and our plans for 2021. Due to COVID-19, all recreational programming staff and leadership and leaders have been laid off since November of 2020 and have been moved to other positions within the city. Once they are all back working in recreational services, then this work can be resumed as per plan.
Thanks for that update, and I think it will be important to hear about that, especially when we're getting into budget deliberations, and also after going through this whole COVID year. I think recreation is an incredibly important discussion to have this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Chaboyer. Now we've got Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had one inquiry, if I may. In November of 2018, I brought forward an inquiry for further study on the intersection of McDermott Drive and Victoria Avenue to see if perhaps pedestrian safety measures could be put in place to calm traffic and allow for safe passage of pedestrians through this busy corridor. Having responded to a number of resident requests, I felt it prudent to bring it forward at that time. In the passage of the 2020 budget, funds were allocated as part of that budget to complete the work, but 2020 passed without completion of the pedestrian corridor. I was wondering if perhaps city officials could provide an update on when the proposed and approved project would move forward, and whether any further funds would need to be allocated over and above the approved 2020 budget amounts for 2021 budget. As we close in on deliberations on this budget next weekend, I would like to have further follow-up on my promise to the Residency University Ward and be in a position to propose the funds needed to work should we require further funding at budget time.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Again, back to Mr. Hammond.
Through you, Your Worship, this response has been provided by Sam Van Housen, the Traffic and Transportation Planner. The existing crosswalk on Victoria Avenue at McDermott Drive was evaluated to explore if additional improvements were necessary to accommodate pedestrian and motorist safety. It was determined that rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs, would be an appropriate and cost-effective improvement as recommended by the Transportation Association of Canada guidelines for pedestrian crosswalks. The city has approached Manitoba Infrastructure with our analysis to garner a cost share for the enhanced treatment. Given that it was very late in the year, in 2019, when we approached MI, the city included a portion of funds in the 2020 budget to help fund the project. Unfortunately, this project was delayed due to the effects of COVID-19 and the province's insistence on having a full pedestrian corridor with overhead lights on the davits. The engineering department has received assurances that the project will move forward in 2021 and has requested that funds be included in the 2021 budget for consideration by City Council. Engineering has also identified some sidewalk approach improvements to improve access for all pedestrian and assistive mobility devices. These improvements are also being planned for the 2021 sidewalk improvement program this summer.
Thank you very much for that, Acting City Manager Hammond. I'm sure the residents that continue to advocate for that will be happy to hear that work will be put in place in 2021. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Now, those were the inquiries we are aware of. Once in a while, there's what I call an audible question that might have come in during the day, and we could take those now. Not seeing any hands up, so I think we got them covered off. So next item, please.
The order of announcements, Your Worship.
Any announcements this evening? It tends to be a lot less events to announce these days, but sometimes there's other things. Councillor Lupke, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. This is kind of an announcement and a PSA all in one, I guess. As I'm sure most are aware, the super immunization site for COVID-19 opened at the Keystone Center earlier today, but the appointments or the people being immunized at this point are by appointment only. The Keystone Center's had an influx of calls over the last few days, so just advise members of the public. Obviously, there's a queue for getting the vaccinations, and right now they're by appointment for healthcare workers right now. So encouraging people not to contact the Keystone Center directly in regards to the immunization site.
Very good. That's probably a very worthwhile announcement, Councillor Lupke. And I'm guessing that as we move through this, I'm guessing that the Keystone Center will not likely ever be the place that you call. Manitoba Health will be the quarterback on this effort, and they'll be establishing the appointment system. So thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Lupke. And I've got Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one announcement, if I may. On behalf of the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, a new exhibit, Prairie Vernacular, has opened. They opened with a virtual opening late last week. As with so many things this year, they are virtual in their delivery. But Prairie Vernacular covers a collection of over 100 artworks assembled from public and private collections about life on the prairies, with some examples of historical and contemporary representations of vernacular in artists' practice on the Canadian prairies. So there is a number of items at the Art Gallery currently. It is a traveling exhibit. So anybody that is interested in checking it out and wanting to learn more, they can visit the Art Gallery's website at agsm.ca. Once again, that's agsm.ca.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I have the honor of bringing greetings at the opening of that, which I periodically get to do, but the first time on a virtual platform, so that was very interesting. So thanks for bringing that up. And I've got Councillor Fawcett now.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. I figured I should make just the announcement that every once in a while magazines like Maclean's puts out top 40 most powerful people and such like that. So I just wanted to note, as usual, there's not very many Manitobans on there. It's all around Toronto. But one of those people who lives around Toronto is a former Brandonite, Sanjam Greywall. Anybody that went to Neelan in the late 80s knows who Sanjam is. And he runs his digital news site out of Brampton. And they consider him in Maclean's the part of the 41st most powerful people in the country. So there we go. Kind of a Brandon tie to the Maclean's power. So just a little credit to a Brandonite.
Thank you, Councillor Fawcett. That's very interesting. And we've got Councillor Parker now.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just very quickly, I think we should tip our hat to the Kiwanis Club of Brandon. It was announced today in the paper, in case you missed it, that the new playground being done at Lawrence and Louise, fully accessible, and it's going to start taking shape early this spring. It costs somewhere in the $325,000 area, and so good on the Kiwanis Club for taking that on. It'll be a great addition for residents in that area.
Yes, that will be a great new addition, and kudos to the Kiwanis Club for continuing to find new, very worthwhile projects. Certainly a very important service club in our community. So thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Parker. Now, not seeing any other announcements, so I'll kind of tail off by reminding the public that one of our most important functions as a council is coming up very quickly, and that's the deliberation of the 2021 budget. Typically, right about now, we would be having some form of a public forum, but again, COVID will prevent that from occurring. So we do have some online platforms. The budget documents themselves would reside on the city's website at brandon.ca, along with a format in which you can submit questions or comments and feedback, council would be more than happy to hear that. And then finally, council will be deliberating the budget over a 2-day period on January 29th and 30, 2 full days. Those will be broadcast on our YouTube channel and WCG TV as well. And we know that a lot of people do take in some of that, and we certainly will have our work cut out for us, as we always do, to bring in a great budget for our community. So I believe that's all we have for announcements. So with that, Madam Clerk, we can move on to the next item of business, please.
Under the order of general business, Your Worship, the affordable housing grant request for 23 12th Street.
Very good. I think we've got probably Ms. Trudell ready with a report for us on that to lead that off. Was that the approach? Yeah, go ahead.
Certainly. Good evening. As Mr. Crook provided a very thorough presentation, I'm not going to reiterate all the points he raised. Instead, what I'll do is summarize staff's rationale in recommending the capital grant of $10,000 and a tax offsetting grant equal to 50% of the municipal taxes for the portion of the building of 23 12th Street that is going to house 10 new residential units. When staff received the application for assistance from Mr. Crook, it was evaluated, and we noted that the capital grant requested from council is actually less than 1% of the overall project budget, and the Affordable Housing Reserve has sufficient funding to provide the funding that has been requested. As which council has always desired, the main funder on this project is a higher level of government, and council is coming in more as a supportive role, thus leveraging the dollars that the city is investing in the maximum way possible. The proposed units demonstrate a valid and very real community need. And Mr. Crook has assured us that, and this will be protected through a funding agreement, that the rents charged for the proposed new units will remain affordable long term, and they will rent at employment income housing allowance levels. As Mr. Crook indicated, they are a experienced affordable housing developer as well as an affordable housing landlord. So they've been doing both of those functions very effectively for many years. And then last but not least, obviously, the project fulfills council's desire to facilitate the development of affordable housing units in Brandon. And it also, because of the nature of this project, aligns with council's infill priorities as well as green priorities, as this project will include solar energy. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you, Ms. Trudell. And again, between the two presentations, and that's a good amount of information, but we'll open the floor up now for questions, and then we'll ask for motion after that. Not seeing any hands for questions, so I would take a motion. Councillor Desjardins, go ahead.
Sorry, I did have a question.
Oh, so go ahead then.
I can never get my hand up fast enough. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy, for the presentation, and you know, this is a no-brainer given the scarce amount of money that they're requesting here. This is going to hopefully go forward, and I think this is just to make sure that it's showing that there's some municipal support behind it. But I am wondering about the concentration of affordable housing, and so we're hearing a lot about that. You know, I'm hearing a lot from residents in the downtown area, right? With a lot of addiction challenges. The downtown has certainly faced its share of problems through the pandemic. And I'm just wondering if we've ever taken stock of if we know what concentration of affordable housing we have in the downtown compared to other areas. I remember before I came on to council, I think it was 2013 or 2014, the city had an affordable housing strategy, but we decided not to go with any kind of inclusion policies, right? And I'm just wondering, from your own thoughts, right? Like, is there a point where we need to be careful how much more affordable housing units, smaller units we have centralized, concentrated in our downtown area? Do you have recommendations to the city on supporting market-driven housing to try and balance things out? And one more, security is an issue these days in the downtown. Is there any consideration when we're reviewing affordable housing projects to look at caretakers in some of these places, to look at requesting additional security or cameras? And so I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. I'm certain this is going to go ahead one way or the other, but I'm hoping that you would provide some feedback right now.
Certainly. In response to your question, the discussions you raise with regards to concentration of affordable housing in any one particular area of the neighborhood are not new comments. You are right, these have surfaced in many discussions, and ironically they have surfaced in all areas of the community, not just in the downtown. So I have had these conversations with our planning colleagues on many occasions. We're very cognizant of the concentration that is in the downtown. We've also had these conversations with the Brandon Downtown Development Corporation. So as council well knows, the BDDC has one of their strategic priorities is actually facilitating the development of market units in the downtown, both rental and ownership. And my understanding, obviously there's a change right now with the executive director being not filled right now, but nonetheless, once that's filled and we return back to BDDC's strategic priorities, my understanding is that they are looking to develop a program that would actually incent market housing in the downtown. So they too are cognizant of it. Do I have a set recommendation for you? No, I don't. I mean, it is a target that moves all over various municipalities, various countries. Ultimately, affordable housing properly done, regardless of the concentration, does not need to be an impediment to the neighborhood in which it's developed. And I think that's something that, while I respect the concerns, I also like to remind individuals that well done housing projects, whether they are affordable, market, whatever they may be, can be an enhancement to the neighborhood. So, the long and short of it is your concerns, yes, we've heard them. We've discussed them at a planning level. We've discussed them with the BDDC. We're cognizant of that. We're trying to create balance through some other initiatives as such. The one benefit that we do have with the proponent that is bringing forward this project is they do have a very well-established track record of providing a very well-rounded support structure. So the individuals that are going into these units, while they may be of our most vulnerable population, they do so in an environment that is fully supported, not only through CHA, but through all of the partnership networks. So, I can't give you a firm answer, but what I can tell you is I acknowledge your concerns. We have discussed them, and we are comfortable that the proponent bringing forward this project will ensure that is an enhancement to the downtown, not a detriment.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you. And let's see any other hands up for questions. So then we would be ready for a motion, or it's in your ward. Are you wishing to make one, Councillor Desjardins?
Yes, through your worship, I move that the City of Brandon provide to Community Health and Housing Association Westman Region Inc. a capital grant of $1,000 per bachelor unit, created to a maximum of 10 units, and an annual tax offsetting grant equal to 50% of the general municipal portion of the annual taxes for the bachelor residential units created at 23 12th Street for years 11 to 20 once project construction is complete.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Lupke, whoever wishes to speak.
Very briefly, Your Worship, only to echo Sandy's comments that CHHA has been around for 50 plus years, doing great work in our community, both as a landlord and as a developer. And optimistic that with these builds, we'll create some more places to live for those who are struggling in our community. And it's a beautiful building, and hopefully they receive the funding from the feds.
Thank you very much. I'm sure if the seconder wishes to speak, Councillor Lupke, or...
Well, I think I would reiterate Councillor Desjardins' comment. This is a pretty easy decision of support.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. And next item, please.
Also under general business, Your Worship, an amendment to the fee schedule regulation for cemetery fees.
I believe this was just a bit of a housekeeping item from our previous passage of the fee schedule. So somebody like to make a motion on this one? Councillor Brown?
The amendment is the fee charges 001 be amended by deleting the interment casket fee of $1,210 listed on page 16 of Schedule A to fees charge 001 and substituting therefore the fee of $1,250.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Barry, thank you. Any discussion? Again, just a housekeeping item for us. Not seeing any. We will call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And next item, please.
Under the order of bylaws, Your Worship, bylaw number 7294, which is the new Affordable Housing Financial Assistance Program.
Very good. If we have administration making a presentation before we carry on with second and third reading on this. Again, this is in Ms. Treadell's area. Go ahead if you wanted to make some overview comments before we started.
Certainly. So bylaw 7294 replaces the previous Affordable Housing Incentive Program that was rescinded earlier this year to enable an opportunity for the content to be updated so that it aligned with the provincial housing strategy released in March of 2020. It established the City of Brandon as a minority capital funder in housing projects and ensures relevance of the incentives given the increasing land and construction costs that we find ourselves dealing with. The bylaw proposes a flexible incentive approach rather than a prescribed program. This means that each request for an affordable housing incentive must be brought to City Council for consideration. Incentives considered through bylaw 7294 include capital grants, land donations, and tax offsetting grants. This approach ensures that we meet the legislative requirements to enable the City of Brandon to provide incentives, and it also provides Council the ability to consider all affordable housing incentive requests on a case-by-case basis, taking into consideration the merits of the project, the alignment with community need, the leverage of funds from higher levels of government as well as the private sector, and it also takes into account the health of the affordable housing reserve. Through this incentive bylaw, Prioritization of affordable housing incentives will go to projects that guarantee affordable housing rates for a minimum of 10 years. It will prioritize projects that are being brought forward by not-for-profit organizations, as well as organizations with a demonstrated track record at both developing and operating affordable housing projects. Through this bylaw, requests for capital funding to the city will only be considered when a higher level of government is the majority funder in a project. So as I noted, incentive requests will be considered on a first-come, first-served basis, and they'll be through a written request to administration rather than an application-based program, because of course this is a one-off assessment of a project versus an established program. As with all the projects that the City of Brandon provides incentives to, the next step, should Council approve one through this new bylaw, would be obviously executing the applicable affordable housing agreements. So with that, rather than going into each and every nuance of the bylaw, I would welcome any questions that Council might have.
Well, that was a great explanation, so that leads us off pretty well. But we'll now open up for questions that councillors may have. And not seeing, Councillor Desjardins, go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship to Sandy. And I'm not even sure if you're allowed to share this, Sandy. I'm just wondering if, with the recent Rapid Housing Initiative funding that's been called out, if you've had any other requests from not-for-profits for funding that you just had to tell them to go pound salt because we didn't have enough money in our affordable housing reserve.
For the rapid housing projects, we had a couple of individuals come forward. As it turned out, one of the organizations opted to pursue another available program. So the only one that we needed to act on immediately was Mr. Crooks. Now that said, when we look at overall housing projects in the community, though, our affordable housing reserve is certainly not flush. Hence the reason Council has made it a priority to ensure that what dollars we do invest are really leveraged by a higher level of government. So, we can't afford on our own to be the sole funders, and that's really what this new bylaw is making clearly understood, is that we're happy to facilitate the projects wherever we can, but we do not have the means to be the primary funder in projects. The Rapid Housing Initiative was a fabulous program because the federal government has made available a substantive amount of money, meaning that the contributions we make could be minor and yet still make a difference in the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we begin to take the motions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Sandy. Again, very thorough presentation. With that, second reading of the bylaw would be in order if somebody wanted to take that on. Councillor Cameron, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that bylaw number 7294 to establish an affordable housing financial assistance program be read a second time.
Seconder, please. Councillor Chaboyer. Whoever wish to speak?
No, thank you, Your Worship. I think Ms. Trudell covered it quite well.
Any discussion? Seconder wish to speak? Councillor Chaboyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. No.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands that want to speak on this, so I believe we're probably ready for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Third reading would be in order. Councillor Cameron, would you like to take it? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the bylaw be read a third and final time.
And seconded by Councillor Chaboyer. Are you going to second that, please? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Chaboyer. Any further discussion prior to third reading? Seeing none, again, third reading is required recorded vote. So I'm going to try and carefully watch for the hands. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Giving of notice, Your Worship.
Any giving of notice this evening? Seeing none, next item, please.
A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Chaboyer. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Again, I appreciate the patience of all councillors, patience and cooperation of all councillors and administration as we work through these very extraordinary means of being able to continue to conduct city business, and certainly for residents that are watching and continue to take an interest in their city matters. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody at all of the budget deliberations later in the month. So with that, thank you very much and good evening.